Tier 3 Taskmaster. Just a support, or could he be more? So I recently was able to tier 3 Taskmaster. I really wanted to tier 3 him because we don't have a lot of supports we can use for World Boss Legend, Null, and Mephisto. And yeah, that's mostly the reason why I wanted him. But having tier 3'd him now, I wanted to see if he could potentially be more than just a support. Something kind of like Proxima, where Proxima is a great character on her own, and then she has the additional bonus of being a great support for villain allies. Taskmaster is different because the support applies to all allies and adds a bonus to Weapon Master allies. But nonetheless, I wanted to see if he could operate as a standalone character as well. So these are the stats that my Taskmaster has right now. It's remarkably easy to cap out his stats. I could cap out the crit damage if I wanted to with just 1 or 2 6-star crit damage Urus, and I don't need to cap out the crit rate necessarily because he does have a crit rate buff on his 1 to 5 skill rotation. Otherwise, we're pretty much good on all fronts. As you can see, he does have the Pure Evil and the Weapon Master passive on his kit as well. His Uru is still mostly empty because my stats are almost capped out and I only really use Uru to cap out the stats. Now what's notable about his kit is it did get a rework with this update. Namely, his 3rd skill gets an immunity to all damage, and his... wait, which one was it? His 5th skill. Yeah, his 5th skill got an accumulation based on damage taken. So that's something interesting, and we'll see if that's enough to, make him a good character. He has a crit damage, ignore defense, 140 damage proc. So the ignore defense doesn't really do much because I'm almost capped out on crit damage anyway, but whatever, we have it. We have a stage 6 Power of Angry Hulk and a legendary rank uniform with only one option unlocked because I don't have a lot of the old uniforms, and this uniform is pretty old, so its uniform options will be even older than that. So yeah, even if I get it to Mythic, I'll only have one option there, which is kind of sad. But anyway, that's the build that I have in my Taskmaster. Let's take him into some content and see just how good he is as a standalone character. So I took him into stage 1 of Null with his leadership alongside Mystique and Valkyrie support. The nice thing about Taskmaster is that he has a self-buffing leadership. And what's really nice about that is that he basically operates on 3 supports. His own, Valkyries, and Mystiques. He can triple dip on that support, and it's just really satisfying, at least in terms of team composition. But as you can see here, the damage is a little bit lacking in my opinion. Now the rotation that I'm using right now is I do the 5, try to land the proc on the 5, and then just before the proc comes around again, I activate the 4 so that when he drops the arrows, just before they explode, I can trigger the 5th skill and get the damage of the damage proc on that skill. Now that idea sounds all good in theory, but in execution it's not as easy because the 4th skill has a much shorter skill cooldown than the 5th skill, so the timing may sometimes be a little off if you're trying to use these skills in conjunction with each other. It does work for the most part though, so it's not that bad. And on your off proc moments, you want to use your 3rd skill for the immunity to all damage, or the 2nd skill if you just want to be an iframe. So what do I think of Taskmaster's viability as a standalone character? Well, I don't think he's that good. It is nice that he has immunity on his 3rd skill. He does get super armor on it also, so he doesn't get knocked away too easily. And it synergizes well with the accumulation on his 5th skill, which accumulates damage based on how much damage you take. So stuff like invincibility and immunity are quite nice there, so you can take a few more hits from bosses. But I just don't think the damage is quite all there for Taskmaster. His 1 to 5 skill rotation doesn't hit that hard, and I think that's made much worse by the fact that his tier 3 skill doesn't hit that hard either. So yeah, Taskmaster's not great, and that's kind of what I expected after having, owned this uniform for about a year or so. I've used him in content before, and I didn't really think that a tier 3 skill would save him. I had hope when I saw that he would be getting accumulation on his kit, but yeah, it doesn't really do enough, I think. Maybe things would be different if the accumulation was based on damage dealt rather than damage taken. I don't know if that's enough to make Taskmaster good on his own, but alas, we could spend time talking about the what ifs, the buts, the maybes. Nothing changes the fact that Taskmaster is not that great as a standalone character, and he can't even clear stage 1 of Null for me, so I feel like that kinda says it all. But that's just Taskmaster as a standalone character. Let's talk about Taskmaster as a support. I feel that Taskmaster has the best value as a support character based on the cost it takes to acquire him. Now look, in this discussion, we're gonna limit support characters to characters that provide other characters with increased damage against specific factions, namely supervillains. And I'm gonna limit the discussion also to characters that can be used as supports in World Boss Legends. So these characters need to be able to go to tier 3 or to be transcended. So the characters that we have currently that can do those things are Proxima, Mystique, Valkyrie, and Taskmaster. Let's look at the cost it takes to acquire all of these characters. So, apart from Mystique, all of the characters need a 1050 crystal investment because you need to get their uniform. You don't necessarily need Valkyrie's uniform because her support is kind of built into her tier 2 passive, but I think the uniform is really necessary to get the best out of her, so I'm going to consider the cost of the uniform anyway. You have to spend 2,500 crystals to get Mystique as a character, and then either spend more crystals to get more X genes to get her to tier 2, or use a Mega tier 2 ticket on her. The same can be said for Valkyrie. You can farm her bios from the Dimension missions for free, which is what I did in order to get her as a 1-star character, and then you can either, spend money, buy a subscription to get more biometrics to get her to tier 2, or use a Mega rank up ticket and a Mega tier 2 ticket to get her to tier 2. Proxima is a native tier 2 character, so she's very expensive to build on her own. You can ask free-to-play players, low-spending players. They'll all say that native tier 2 characters are very hard to build and are very taxing on in-game resources. Taskmaster, on the other hand, is about as cheap as you can get for a character. Very simple to build. You can use normal biometric selectors on him. You can grind the biometrics out from Shadowland, not to mention the fact that you literally get a 6-star Taskmaster from the Black Widow Legendary Battle. So then after that, you transcend the character or you take them to tier 3. Proxima is immediately the worst of the 4 because her support buff only applies to villain allies, so it makes it less versatile. Immediately the best support on this list is Valkyrie because not only does she provide a very high 50% damage to supervillains, she also provides 30% ignore dodge, which is quite good for World Boss Legend. And then, who's the second best? I say it's Taskmaster. Both Mystique and Taskmaster's supports apply to all allies, but Taskmaster has the edge because he has the potential to provide additional buffs for Weapon Master allies. So basically, you're getting the second best support of the 4 available supports for what I would consider the cheapest price to build. There's a lot of value in building Taskmaster as a support character. That's all I'm getting at. And I wanted to highlight just how good of a support Taskmaster is, specifically for Weapon Master characters by using Bucky and Moon Knight as examples. So we have one run here where you have Mystique support, and you have another run where the Mystique support is replaced by Taskmaster support. Taskmaster's tier 2 passive is literally the only difference between Mystique and Taskmaster as support characters, so it's pretty much a fair comparison. Now, I know maybe some people, when they think of Weapon Master characters, think maybe Cable, because I think right now he's the strongest Weapon Master character, but Cable can't really take advantage of Taskmaster's tier 2 passive because he has his own guaranteed crit rate and his own skill damage bonus damage. And if you didn't know, those things don't stack, so it's not really effective for a character like Cable. But Bucky and Moon Knight are good examples of characters who can take advantage of Taskmaster's tier 2 passive because he provides them with a few things that their kit is missing. And you can see the difference that it makes in the comparison that I'm showcasing right now. Basically, for Weapon Master allies who can take advantage of Taskmaster's tier 2 passive, Taskmaster is an amazing support for them. He really enhances their damage by a significant margin. Now look, I'll be the first to admit right now, the advantage of having Taskmaster's tier 2 passive as a support isn't really that great now. Like I said, we don't have too many Weapon Master allies, and the Weapon Master allies that we do have that are good, like Cable for example, doesn't need Taskmaster. He doesn't really get anything from Taskmaster. Again, because he has his own guaranteed crit rate and skill damage bonus damage. And characters who can take advantage of him, like Bucky and Moon Knight, they're not really that great for World Boss Legend 2. Basically, on paper, Taskmaster's Weapon Master support is really good, but will only really feel its greatness in-game based on the characters who can take full advantage of this support. Right now, the characters who can take full advantage of the support aren't really that great, so we don't really feel the greatness of Taskmaster's support. But if one day there is a character who reaches the top of the meta that can take full advantage of everything that Tasky provides, that will be the pinnacle of Taskmaster as a support character. And if you invest in him now, you're basically investing in that future should it one day come to fruition. But even without the full potential of his Weapon Master support being realized, at worst, he provides your team additional damage against supervillains, whether you're a supervillain, a superhero, or something in between. And I think that's pretty neat. Yeah, I know I talk too much. Basically, Taskmaster, not a great standalone character, a pretty good support, could be great one day if the right character arrives. Now, I know it's not considered, sexy to invest in a support character. We all like our damage dealers, but realistically, support characters just have a longer shelf life than damage dealing characters. New, higher damage dealing characters come out every single update. So whatever damage dealing character you have right now, there's the risk that they're replaced in a month, 2 months, 3 months, or however long down the line. There's always gonna be a new, shinier, higher damage dealing character eventually. But supports, no matter what happens, they'll still be able to support you. They just last longer than damage dealing characters. You gotta trust me on this. They're better investments, at least for the long term. Okay, bye!